So in this video on iScaf, we're going to go through the process of importing PDF plans for you to scale and then draw your scaffold around so that it perfectly matches the site that you're going to scaffold. So I just have iScaf open here. I am just going to launch a new drawing just by clicking on this Start Drawing tile. That will use our default template to open up a blank drawing. Just going to initialize, and I'm ready to insert my background plan. So, as with many commands, there are multiple ways of launching the same item in iScaf. We can use the iScaf menu, and on the build menu we have the option to insert a background PDF. And if we wanted to insert a raster image like a TIFF image or a TIFF scan bitmap, you can use the insert overlay, which works exactly the same way for TIFF files. For PDFs, you would choose Insert Background PDF. Notice the icon to the left of that command is duplicated in our ribbon. Up here, in our Perimeter and Plan section of the iScaf ribbon, you can see there is an Insert Background PDF shortcut along with Insert Background Image. You can launch it using either of those methods. So I'm going to use the ribbon. Just click once and it's going to launch the command Insert PDF Underlay. Now that will present us with a File Open dialog so that we can select the file we need to import for our plan. So I'm going to select this boiler example, and then iScaf presents us with some options for importing the file. It is a one-page PDF that we're importing, so it only gives us an option for the first page. So we're going to select that, leave these options blank so that the command functions correctly, and then it's going to import that background PDF plan. It now will prompt us for reference lines so that we can scale the drawing correctly. You can see at the cursor in the center of the screen, iScaf is prompting us to select the start and end of a dimension line to scale the drawing. And that prompt is also down here in the command line. There are times when that prompt at the cursor will disappear under certain circumstances, but the prompt is always down in the command line. So it's always a good idea to keep an eye down here in the command line when you're executing an iScaf command so that you can see if it is asking you to do anything specific. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in on one of these dimension lines in the plan that tells us the scale of the drawing. And we're going to choose a large dimension line. So we are going to choose this 13600 line. This plan has been scanned in at a fairly low resolution, so it doesn't have quite the fidelity that you may become accustomed to. It is still good enough to scale correctly. So I'm going to zoom in on this endpoint of that dimension line, and just at the center click once, left click, and then the prompt changes to specify the second point. So I'm going to zoom out by scrolling my mouse wheel backwards and scrolling to the other side and select the center of the other dimension point. Click once more, and then iScaf prompts us for the length of the dimension line we've just selected each end of. Say in this case it was 13600. That's in millimeters. If you were using the imperial system, you would put your dimension lines in inches. So we have 13600, and now it has scaled that background PDF to correctly scale lines to the correct length that they are. And iScaf is now asking us to remove extraneous information from this plan so that it doesn't clutter up our design and makes it easier to see and read. We're just going to make a window around the actual plan area that we're interested in. Clicking once in the top left-hand corner and then scrolling out to encapsulate all the parts of the plan that we're interested in. And then we're going to click the other corner and iScaf will clip the drawing. Often in iScaf, when you clip a PDF, the image will disappear like this. There are two ways to resolve that. The quick and easy way is just to zoom in and out with your mouse wheel, and that will regenerate the drawing. Or the other option is to type in the regen command just at the keyboard and press enter. And that will regenerate the display view and it will show up the plan correctly clipped. This is now scaled correctly, so we can just build scaffold on it. I'm going to use the new wall command just from the edit wall section of the ribbon. Click on that once. Choose two endpoints with a 1.2 bay width. I select the first insert point. I'm going to scaffold across this edge here and the second edge point for two endpoints just created our scaffold. We'll do another one on the inside of the boiler here. Create another new wall, same options, and just scaffold in there. That's our first example. We'll do another one. I will just close this drawing and create a new one. This time I'm going to select the metric sheets template. It's another way of opening the drawing. Once more, I'm going to insert the background PDFs. I'm going to use the iScaf menu this time to insert a background PDF from the build menu. Click once, choose our second example. Again, this PDF plan that we're importing only has one page to select. So we just select that and leave these other options blank. This is a much more technical drawing, and once more we are prompted for the start and end of a dimension line to scale this PDF. Here is a nice large one at the top of the screen, 16090. Just click at one end of this line, zooming in so that we are nice and accurate. Click once near the center, zooming out, pan across to the other side and scrolling the mouse wheel to zoom in. Getting the center of that dimension line. And once more, we're prompted at the command line and at the cursor to type the length for the dimension line we've just selected. So for that dimension line, it was 16090. Once more, we're asked to clip the drawing. So I'm going to clip the extraneous information we don't want. We can actually click from either direction. So I'm going to start from the bottom left because that is going to be easier for me to see the areas that are included with that bay window. And click once more. This time, rather than using the regen command, I'm just going to use my wheel to scroll in and out, and the screen has regenerated our drawing. I'm going to scaffold around this drawing now. This time, rather than using the new wall command, I am going to draw a perimeter around this drawing. For that, I'm going to use the draw line tool from the Perim Plan section of the ribbon. Click the tool once, and that activates the draw line command. We're being prompted to specify the point for the first point of our perimeter. In iScaf, we always draw our perimeters in a clockwise direction, and we always start at the bottom left of a drawing and work our way around it clockwise. So I'm going to start at this bottom left area here. I'm going to click there to place our first point, and now I can move on to my second point in creating a perimeter or a scaffold to follow. This is just allowing me to click arbitrarily anywhere in the drawing, but we can make drawing a little bit easier for these types of drawings by turning on orthogonal mode, which restricts movement to lines to be the points of the compass: north, south, east and west, just at every 90-degree angle. The way we accomplish that is to turn on ortho mode by tapping your F8 key. There are a range of icons and status lights at the bottom of iScaf here, and you'll see this one with the right angle sign is turning ortho mode on and off. When you're in the middle of an iScaf command, like we are at the moment, we're in the middle of drawing a perimeter. If we click on any of these icons, it will stop the command from executing and we'll have to start again. But if you point at them, you can see that there is a shortcut to turn them on and off from the keyboard, and for ortho that's the F8 key. If we tap the F8 key, we can continue inside our iScaf command without creating an error and turn the mode on. So I'm going to tap F8 and you'll see that the indicator glows blue, and now we've turned on ortho mode. Now you can see when I move my cursor around, it's restricting my movements to only work at 90-degree angles. So I'm going to zoom in here and have a nice vertical line to my next point, and then I can scroll out to my next point. Just clicking again, still being restricted to 90-degree angles, and I can work my way around the drawing, keeping nice 90-degree angles. At this point I need to follow this bay window around, so I just tap F8 and the status indicator turns off, and I can now place my point wherever I like. It is not restricted. I want a nice vertical line for this one, so I'm going to tap F8 to turn on orthogonal mode again. Tap it once more to turn it off to follow this angle, and turn it back on again. And then I can quickly work my way around this drawing, just clicking at each point. With that point, I haven't done it quite as wide as I would like to. You'll see why it pays to keep an eye on this command prompt down the bottom of the screen. There's an option there to undo with the U key, so that last point, if I'm not happy with it, I can just type U at the keyboard and press enter, and the last point in our perimeter is erased. We're still in the middle of setting our perimeter using the line command, but I can respecify that point. Similarly, I'm unhappy with those last 2 points. I can undo again, so U is undo, and that undoes that point, and again to the previous point. So now I can redo those with a little bit more accuracy without exiting the command or having to redo what we've done so far from scratch. Another one of our commands we are being prompted for is the close command. And so that command draws a line from our last point to the first point. So I'm just going to C and enter to close our perimeter. Now we can use our iScaf setup defaults to change the bay fit type to fine, to fit tight, so it follows this a little bit more closely with up to 4 different bay sizes. And I'm going to build around that perimeter just by clicking the build plan command, or I could use the iScaf menu build plan. And iScaf builds a scaffold, attempting to follow that perimeter. And we can then make modifications to that as we please. I'm going to move on to a third example. So I'll close this drawing and create a new blank one. I'm going to insert a background PDF once more, just by clicking on the ribbon shortcut. I'm going to choose this full plan example. You can see this is slightly different to the other two that we've had because we are presented with multiple pages. We can select which one we want to import. I'm going to open up the plan in our PDF viewer full screen, and I'm going to scroll through the plan to find a relevant page that we can use to scaffold. This site plan is not very detailed and there is no suitable dimension lines, so I'm going to keep looking. Scrolling to the next page. This one looks reasonable, but there are no dimension lines for which we can scale the drawings. So I'm going to move to the next page. This is looking much more like what we're interested in. We have our fairly detailed plan and we have some dimension lines that we can use to scale a drawing. That's page 3 of the drawing. I'll return back to iScaf and select page 3 to import. Leave those options blank as usual. I click OK, and once more we're being asked for the start and end of a dimension line to scale our drawing. I'm looking to choose a long one, so this one at the top looks good. Zooming in, just scrolling the wheel button, right in the center, clicking once, and we're being asked for the second point. Zoom out, pan across with our wheel button. Find the center of the second point and type the dimension. So that's 23425 millimeters. And then clip our drawing. This time I'm going to use the regen command to redraw the drawing. This plan, you can see, has quite strong drawing lines. And so I'm going to make a modification to the layer that the PDF is in. And make it more transparent so that this plan fades a little bit better into the background, and it will be easier to see on our 2D plan the difference between our 2D scaffold and the floor plan. So I'm going to do that, and there are two methods. We can just go into iScaf setup, and on the other setup button, the overlay transparency we can set. We're going to increase the transparency from the default of 50 and going to increase that to 70. If we keep an eye on this background PDF, we will see that it fades a bit more into the background and becomes less domineering in our drawing. Now, the other way to modify your transparency is the layer dialog, which you activate by clicking the Layer Properties Manager in the toolbar here. And that will open up a dialog of all the layers in the drawing. The layer we're interested in is the overlay layer, so we scroll down until you see the overlay layer. And you can see on this section of the line, the transparency for the overlay layer that contains our PDF is set to 70. So I'm going to just click on that, and then I can change that value. I'm going to increase that to 80. Now that's modified, I can close this dialog by clicking the little X in the top right hand corner, and you can see that the background has faded even more into the background. So it's less domineering, but still easy enough to trace around. I'm going to draw another perimeter around this plan, but this time I'm going to use the Draw Perimeter command. That, similar to the other commands, is replicated in the iScaf build menu, as well as being in the build section of the ribbon. It's exactly the same command. So I'm just going to execute that. As I said before, when you draw a perimeter, we always draw from the bottom left of the drawing, and we work in a clockwise direction. We are being prompted to enter the start point for the line. So I'm just going to start at the bottom left, zooming in here and clicking for our first point. You will notice that the prompt for the Draw Perimeter command is different to the one that we use for the Draw Line command. So it asks for two pieces of information separate from each other. It asks for the direction of the line, and then it asks for the distance of the line. We have the option of either entering the direction we want to take the line, and that will set the direction, or we can click in the direction, which is what I'm going to do for this point. So I'm going to click once to set the point in that northerly direction. And now it is asking for the distance. So I will click here a second time. It now sets the distance of that line. This time, rather than clicking the direction, I'm going to type the direction. And you can see we're offered north, south, east, west. You can also use northeast, northwest, northeast. You can use those points of the compass to specify an angle. You can type an angle if you wish, and any arbitrary angle you wish between 0 and 360 degrees you can enter. I'm going to go west, so I'm going to type W to set the west direction. And then I can set the distance just by clicking. This point I'm going to go north, so N, enter. And this time I'm going to type a distance. So that looks like about 1500. I could be wrong. I am. So this becomes useful if you don't have a background drawing to trace around and you just have a sketch or a measure of the on-site angles for a site. You can just type the direction and distances from origin of your plan and work around just by typing in angles and distances. I'm going to undo that last point, which is one of our options, undo. I'm just typing U, enter. I'm going to set this point manually just by clicking once for the direction and once for the distance. I move across to the other side of the drawing. I'm clicking once for the direction and once for distance. I'm going to turn ortho mode on again to ask iScaf to restrict my angles to be right angles. So I'll do that just by tapping the F8 key. You can see we haven't quite exactly lined up across here, so I'm going to undo that last point to line it up a little bit better. A little bit closer to the bottom, one click for direction, one click for distance. And then you can see it's quite a good angle, so I'm just going to close the perimeter by using the close command just like before. Type C, enter, and that just draws a line between the last point we created and the first point we created. Once again, we can just set our scaffold build mode, so select course fit and build plan around that perimeter. So you can see it is very simple to import and scale a background PDF image or a TIFF image to use as a background for your scaffold drawing.